Amen. Good morning, church. Sorry I missed my first appointment with you. Thank you for covering for me, David. It's a busy day out there in good ways. I'm sure everyone in the room is feeling a little bit better today. I do see some burnt orange. Congratulations. Yeah, we're feeling better, but I'm excited to be back with you. And continuing on our journey in the Gospel of Matthew. Last week, admittedly, I think was a heavy week, wasn't it? I know it was heavy for me. I think it was probably heavy for you too. Those of you who weren't here with us, we took an extended and deep dive look at the betrayal, the psychology, and the tragedy of Judas Iscariot and his betrayal of Jesus. It was decidedly raw, but a hopefully convicting look at a figure who we commonly make a cartoonish villain, with whom we tell ourselves we have nothing in common, but in reality, who was a complex and sobering mirror for us all to look into. And for as much as we like to believe that we would never do what Judas did, that we would never sell Jesus, especially for 30 pieces of silver, when we got really honest, it turns out that many of us, myself included, have sold Jesus for far less than that and more than once. And so when we slow down to recognize that maybe the space between Judas and us isn't as vast as we imagined it to be, we saw that the seeds of his downfall and his betrayal are alive in the assumptions that we make, the compromises that we make, and the quiet bargains that we try to make with God about how we think life is supposed to go. And it was uncomfortable, sure, perhaps you felt that, but it was necessary, and it was healthy, absolutely. And the question you might be asking is, are we done with Judas? And the answer to that is also absolutely not. We got to go one more time today. I think we need one more look at Judas, but not Judas alone. We need to look at Judas and Peter and ourselves all together in comparison with what Jesus is trying to get us to see, because something really interesting happens right after the end of the Last Supper. Something that, to be honest, probably escapes our notice if we're not locked in with laser-like focus. It certainly escaped mine for a long time. The story moves exceedingly quickly. We can jump right into the betrayal in the garden. We can jump in the other gospel accounts to Jesus in Gethsemane. We can jump into the two sham trials that Jesus is going to participate in. We're going to jump right into the crucifixion narrative. All of that is to come. But Jesus takes a moment before any of that to give a deep shot of perspective to his disciples that they needed to heed if their faith was going to survive what was about to happen. And as it turns out, it's the same shot of perspective that disciples today need if our faith is going to survive. And not only just that our faith is going to survive or their faith is going to survive, but so that they could fulfill the call and the mission that he had for them. And it's the same for us today too. And these confusing words that Jesus says right after Judas leaves to execute the tragic betrayal are these: all of you, he says. Read with me again in Matthew chapter 26. Beginning here, it says, when they had sung a hymn in verse 30, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." And Peter answered him, "Though they will all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." And Jesus said to him, "Truly, I say to you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said to him, "Even if I must die, I will not deny you." And all of the disciples said the same. So here's what's going on. Jesus has just eaten the Passover with his disciples. He, as a matter of fact, has instituted communion, and he's dismissed Judas as the betrayer in full view of them all. And all of them are still trying to put together what that means. The other gospel accounts record that they thought that Judas was leaving to go and make preparations for the rest of the Passover. And Jesus chooses to say this very challenging thing to them. And Jesus says that it's not just Judas who's going to betray him. And this is important because we can't afford to miss this. It's going to inform the rest of the story and the narrative, and it has the lesson for us today too. You see, while they were eating, Jesus had said, "Someone will betray me." And all of them in disbelief said, "Lord, is it I? Surely not I. I could never be the one." So after singing, Jesus is now making it a point to let all of them know that even though Judas has gone out to do what he's going to do, none of you is above Judas. He is going to betray me, yes, but all of you need to know that each and every one of you is going to desert me as well. You are not above it. And of course, the response is, "No, we won't." And Peter, I love Peter. Peter is here playing the comparison game. See, Peter's problem at this point in the story is he views and evaluates his own righteousness in comparison to the other disciples instead of in comparison to Jesus. And so his answer to Jesus saying, "You're all going to fall away," is, even if they all fall away, it couldn't be me. I'm not the one. Even if all those other people fall away, and we do this so often, so many times even today, our ego and our sense of right standing comes from how we see ourselves in evaluation of other people. And we see this all the time. We're guilty of it, and we say, I would never be caught dead doing what they did. I would never make a mistake like that. Somebody missed a few hugs growing up, because how do you even end up in a situation like that? I would never, ever stoop to that level. And we get a sense of pride and ego from this idea that we're not like them. And we do it on a congregational level too, and on a church level. We are going to stand for the truth here, not like these other heretics down the road. We're always going to be the ones here that will never fall away. And so the disciples say in verse 35, they all agree that even if they have to die, they by no means will betray Jesus. They by no means would ever deny Jesus. They're not the type like Judas. And as we know, not long after this, things get crazy. Judas shows up with a mob. Peter takes off an ear. Jesus puts it back on. Jesus is essentially arrested without resisting, and then he's led through 2 sham trials before the Jews. And then we find Peter outside after beholding all of this, just a few minutes later in verse 69, hearing the discourse going on inside of that high priest's house. It says Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You were with Jesus the Galilean?" But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." And I want you to pay attention here to the escalation in Peter's denials. See, when the servant girl first comes to him, he just kind of plays dumb like he doesn't know what they're talking about. You ever ask someone a question, they pretend like they don't understand, but you know they understand exactly what you're talking about? They're just not trying to engage directly with it, so they're just trying to deflect it. This is what Peter is doing right here. Hey, you were with Jesus the Galilean. I'm not even sure what you're talking about. Like he's not at the trial of Jesus the Galilean sitting in the courtyard. So he says, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." In verse 71, when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again, he denies it with an oath. See how he escalates and goes further than he did the last time. He says, "I do not know the man." He's done pretending that he doesn't know what they're talking about. Now he directly denies that he even knows Jesus. He's gone a level further. And then it continues. After a while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you two are one of them. Your accent betrays you." See, he's from Galilee. He's from the country. They can hear it. All of y'all who are from Texas originally, when you go somewhere else, they know you're from Texas. Yeah, they know. When you walk into a store where I'm from and try to order sweet tea, it doesn't exist. They know where you're from. It betrays you. And they come up to Peter and they say, "We can hear it in your voice. We hear it in your accent. You were with him." And watch how he goes even further this time. He begins to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And he utters those words, and it says immediately the rooster crows. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and he wept bitterly. You know, I can relate to Peter here. Because as he sits there in the stinking, cold, heavy realization that they were actually going to kill Jesus, there is a weight even greater weighing on him now. And that is the fact that everything he's measured himself by, everything he believes about himself, everything he believes in, everything that he thought was true about himself has been torn away. And what's worse, he has not lived up to who he said he was. In fact, he is exactly who he said that he wasn't. He's who he said he would never be. And then he weeps bitterly. And in that moment, I wonder if Peter asked, could God ever forgive such a crippling failure? Has God turned his face away from me? Have I committed the ultimate betrayal? Peter is now shocked that he is as broken and fearful as he has turned out to be. He is now wondering, how did we end up here? He was the great confessor and defender of the faith. No, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but God alone, he himself has revealed this to you, and he has come apart at the seams under the pressure of a servant girl. And now many of us catch the gravity of what Peter has actually done here. But the reality is, in the context of their world, for a disciple to publicly disassociate from their rabbi is unheard of. It is the truest slap in the face of a rabbi that you could ever receive. On a lot of levels, in a lot of ways, if you understand the context, you would come to understand that Peter's denial is a greater betrayal than Judas's betrayal. And now I see some raised eyebrows and you're like, are you serious? Judas got Jesus killed. How is Peter just denying him even greater? Because Judas made his error while being misguided in his understanding of Jesus' mission. Peter refuses to associate with Jesus at all. And we only see the significance of this moment by watching Jesus' interactions later with Peter in the Gospel of John. It's one of those situations where we don't really get the full picture until we can put together all of the different accounts from all of the different witnesses that are showing what is happening. By the time we get to the Gospel of John in the end in chapter 21, Peter has gone back to fishing. He has gone back to his old life. This is after the resurrection. And he's gone back to his old life because he understands that his time as a disciple is over. He has forsaken his rabbi. It's the cardinal offense. He remembers the words of Jesus that we recount often, where Jesus said, "If you deny me before men, I will deny you before my Father." He knows what it means for him to have denied Jesus. He's no longer a disciple. Peter goes back to fishing because that's his trade. And we know it's not even surprising to the other disciples because it makes sense. Hey man, we'll go with you. Stop and consider for just a moment that if we didn't have the Gospel of John, we would have very little information about how we get from Peter's denial to the book of Acts. Only the Gospel of John records anything that's happening between those two moments. The other Gospels stop telling us about Peter's story when he denies Jesus. And then we get to the book of Acts, and Peter is back in the play, and he's a leader amongst the men. And if you didn't have Peter's best friend John writing his gospel, you might get to the book of Acts and ask, how did Peter even get back in this thing? Like last I saw, he was cursing at some servant girl. Like, what is he doing here? But we can know that this is the case even from what the other gospel writers write. You see, in the Gospel of Mark, we have this account right after the resurrection in chapter 16. It says, when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, the mother of James and Salome, brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb, and they were saying to one another, who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb? And looking up, they saw that the stone had already been rolled back, and it was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting right beside, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, don't be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Amen. Praise God for that. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. Verse 7 is what's integral to what we're talking about today. The angel says, go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. Did you catch the subtle, specific wording there? Why does he have to say, go tell the disciples and Peter also? It's because if the angel doesn't tell them to tell Peter, they're going to leave him out. And they're going to leave him out because he's not a disciple anymore. Peter doesn't even believe he's a disciple anymore. Peter knows that he's blown it. He has made the ultimate mistake. Denying your rabbi is a mistake that you do not come back from. Yet, there is something important that the authors of all four Gospels are trying to get us to understand. Because through all four Gospels, they are adamant and they keep telling us again and again and again that Judas is the betrayer. Judas is the betrayer. Judas is the betrayer. And some scholars have said that the reason why the Gospel writers have to keep telling us over and over and over again that Judas is the betrayer is because if you were from that time period reading this Gospel, especially if you were a Jew and someone asked you to tell them who the betrayer was, they would have said Peter. Because Judas got it wrong, but Peter distanced himself from Jesus altogether. So the Gospels, again and again, keep telling us directly, Judas is the betrayer because they don't want us to miss what we're talking about today. So if you're denying your rabbi is the greater betrayal, what is it about Peter and Judas that makes Judas the one who really betrayed Jesus? It's the way their stories end. They both make huge mistakes. One of them misjudges who their teacher is and what he's about and what he's in the world to do. And one of them completely disassociates from his rabbi altogether. Both are wrong. Both are horribly wrong. But one decides that this is where their story ends, and the other was willing to look Jesus in the eyes. Think back with me to the beginning of our text today, when Jesus told the disciples that they would desert him ahead of time. He told Peter ahead of time that he was going to deny him thrice. And then in the same breath, Jesus says, I will see you in Galilee after I'm raised up. And that could only mean that God's faithfulness and Jesus' love for you is not dependent on your perfect performance. It's the only way that Jesus could say, you are all going to fall away and you're going to deny me 3 times. You're going to commit the unthinkable, the thing that no one comes back from. But on the other side of it, I will see you in Galilee. He knows Peter better than Peter knows himself. If he knew you before you were in the womb, then he knows you better than you know yourself. That means he knows your mistakes ahead of time. Jesus was already planning for Peter's restoration before Peter's betrayal even happened. And there are people sitting here today or watching today or at some point in the future who thinks that God cannot use them because of what they've done or mistakes they've made. Someone is sitting here believing that now that they've done that thing, committed XYZ, that their time as a fruitful disciple of Jesus is over, that they're forever tainted, that what God called you to originally do, you have forfeited because you have not lived up to the standard and you haven't been good enough. But if that is you, hear me clearly. The scripture says you are wrong. Jesus says you are wrong. Someone told me a while back that when God made his plan for the world and decided to put your life in it, he already figured your stupidity into the equation. And I felt that deeply. Jesus can be knowing that they're all going to fail him and still be going ahead of them into Galilee because God has already done the math. And if you know anything, church, or remember anything, church, just remember this: God math don't miss. Y'all got to say that with me. Say, God math don't miss. No, again, I don't want perfect grammar. God math does not miss. No, I want you to, God math don't miss. Ready? God math don't miss. Amen. The scriptures prove it to us. Because if you do turn over to the Gospel of John and you go to chapter 21, we see this. This is the account. After Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, he revealed himself in this way: Simon, Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. He said, man, there's some Texas dudes in here right now that when things get stressful, you immediately think, I'm going on the boat today, because you just need to get away. This is what Peter is doing. I'm going back to what I know. I'm going back to what's familiar. And they look at him, the rest of the disciples, and say, we'll go with you. So they all get in the boat. And that night, they caught nothing. Just as the day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, and the disciples did not know who it was. And Jesus said to them, children, have you caught any fish? I love how playful Jesus is when he catches us slipping. Children, have you caught any fish? He knows they haven't caught anything. They answered, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. The disciple whom Jesus loved, I love how John talks about himself, therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and he threw himself into the sea. And the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from land, about 100 yards off. And when they got to land, they saw a charcoal fire in place with fish laid on it and bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you have just caught. So Simon Peter went and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. Although there were so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, come and have some breakfast. All of y'all who are giving up your brunch to listen to me run, just know that I know that Jesus affirms brunch, and you'll get to have it someday. But today is not that day. Here's why we're talking about it. This is where Peter and Judas are different. Judas realizes that he's betrayed Jesus, and in keeping with his modus operandi, in keeping with the way that he does things and sees the world, he chooses to force God's hand one more time. He decides that there's no coming back from this, and he takes his own life because his heart is overcome with guilt and grief. And in that guilt and grief, he restricts what God can do. He decides to restrict what Jesus can do. I want you to think about that very seriously. When you make a mistake, when you fall, do you decide in your mind and in your heart that this now restricts what God can do? That this now somehow changes what God is capable of? He said something that isn't too unfamiliar to any of us. There's no coming back from this. Or some of you have said, surely I can't be forgiven for this. Maybe there's just enough grace for me to get into heaven by the skin of my teeth. And some of us say, I deserve the punishment that God is putting on me now. That's Judas. And here we have Peter, who has, according to their worldview, committed the greater betrayal, the one that there really is no coming back from. But he has not hardened his heart further like Judas has. Instead, what he has experienced has humbled his heart. That is always the choice of a heart that gets confronted with an uncomfortable reality or an uncomfortable truth. You will either harden your heart or you will humble your heart. And it's actually beautiful because the humbling of Peter's heart, it makes him even greater than he could have been before without the humbling. You see, when Peter, who no longer considers himself among the disciples, hears the word of the gospel, he still runs to the tomb because he still loves Jesus. He still cares. And in this passage, at the end of the Gospel of John, we see Peter not knowing where to go from here. So I'm just going to go fishing. Peter just decides to go back to work. He's going back to what he knows, what's familiar, maybe something that he feels he won't fail catastrophically about. And I just wonder, how many times have we stepped out into what God has called us to do, experienced resistance, a setback, an obstacle, or failed in some way, and decided, you know what? Maybe that means it's not for me. I'm just going to retreat back into what I knew and what's familiar and what's comfortable to me. I think that happens all the time. We do it the same way. Here's the amazing part, though. Peter doesn't believe he's a disciple anymore, but when he says he's going fishing, the rest of the disciples go with him. Some of you are not with me yet. Check this out. When Jesus shows up, he playfully taunts Peter and the other disciples, much like he did in an earlier encounter. You remember when he showed up and said, have you caught any fish? And they're like, no, cast the net over to the other side. And then they bring in a big haul of fish. So on this occasion, Peter says, no, we haven't caught any fish. But on that first occasion, what did Jesus tell Peter he was going to make him at the very beginning? He said, follow me, and I will make you a fisher of. And look in Peter's boat at this occasion, where there are no fish, but there are a bunch of men. There are disciples who, even at Peter's lowest moment, are still following him. And they are following him because he has, despite his failings, become exactly what Jesus said he was going to make him. Here's what this means. It means that Peter's fall did not cancel out Jesus' call. I need you to say that one with me. Peter's fall didn't cancel Jesus' call. Now let's take it closer to home. My fall doesn't cancel Jesus' call. I need you to internalize that and believe that. Because Peter thought he was lost. And Jesus shows up on the beach and says, have you caught any fish? To remind Peter that I don't lose what belongs to me. That's not how it works. Jesus is reminding Peter that their failure to catch any fish is a reminder of what Jesus has actually called them to do and be as disciples. Peter caught no fish that night, but even in his weakness, he caught all the other men, all the other disciples who were still standing with him. And church family, I need you to realize that whatever you are right now, whether you're at your best or your worst, as a child of God, you are called to be a disciple. You are called to fulfill the purpose that God has given you in this life. And the people in your vicinity right now are watching you or following you, whether you realize it or not, because you can't remove God's call off your life. After this, Peter goes for a walk with Jesus, where Jesus makes him confront all three of his denials. And at each confrontation, each one of those denials, Jesus reiterates that what he has called Peter to be has not changed. In verse 15, it says, when they finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And I love what Jesus is doing here. Jesus requires us to be real. We don't get to dance around it. We don't get to deflect. Because when Peter said he would never deny Jesus, he did it in light of the other disciples. He said, even if all of these fall away, I will not fall away. And Jesus comes and meets him head on and says, do you love me more than these? He's bringing it right back to that moment that Peter has been running from. And Peter's response is beautiful. He says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Do you see what's changed in Peter's heart at this point? He is no longer willing to say, I love you more than these. He's not comparing himself to anybody else anymore. He just says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. It's just about me and you, Jesus, face to face. And some of us would be so much better off in our spiritual health if we could just get face to face with Jesus and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing. Stop worrying about what everyone else is going to be. Stop worrying about how we compare to them and just worry about Jesus and me. Jesus continues. He said, feed my lambs. If you love me, I got a job for you. Still, even at this moment, feed my lambs. Verse 16, he says to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Hey, I got a job for you. Tend my sheep. I still got a mission for you. None of this that has happened has canceled the call that I placed on your life. None of this has canceled what you're supposed to accomplish. None of this has shaken my faith in you because I know you to the bottom and I knew you before I called you. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And it says Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, do you love me? And Peter knows these are the 3 times that I denied to the servant girl, to the bystanders. I'm having to confront all 3 of these things. I can't escape from any of them. And Jesus brings it right back to the forefront. Do you love me? Listen to Peter's response. Lord, you know everything. This is very different from their last interaction. Because when Jesus looked at the disciples and he said, all of you will betray me, you all will fall away because of me, Peter looked him dead in the eyes and said, Jesus, I know better than you. I know me better than you know me, and I'm not going to fall away. These jokers over here, they're going to fall away. They're not as faithful as me. They're not as serious as me. I'm ready to die for you. And Jesus looking at him like, I know you better than you know yourself. But this time, Jesus says, do you love me? And Peter says, I admit that you know everything. You know me better than I know myself. And if you know me better than I know myself, you know that I love you, my Lord and my God. What a transformation. Jesus says to him, feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. What is beautiful about this is that the failure and the betrayal that Peter has committed is actually the very thing that Jesus uses to make him worthy and able to accomplish the task that Jesus has set before him. And some of you have made terrible, bitter mistakes. You've betrayed Jesus. You've sold him for less than 30 pieces of silver over and over. You've looked Jesus in the face and said, no, I'm not like them, Lord. I'm not like Judas. I'm not like Peter. I'm not like those other people that are less faithful. I'm not like those other people that don't worship correctly. I'm not like them. I'm better, Jesus. And you've let your heart become like Judas instead of becoming like Peter. Because you haven't realized that sometimes God lets you fall so that you can learn what you need to learn so that you can actually fulfill his call. Peter was willing to face Jesus face to face in his failure. And Judas decided that he couldn't. Judas believed that he was defined by his failures, but Peter came to know that he was refined by them. And he ended his story before Jesus could write a new ending for him. You say, Marcus, that doesn't really follow because Judas killed himself and I don't have the heart of Judas because clearly I'm still here. I'm still living. I haven't gone that far. And I say, don't delude yourself. Don't fool yourself. Because you haven't taken your own life physically, but you've been killing yourself little by little psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. If you've ever said, there's no coming back from this because of what I've done. If you've ever said, God can't forgive this. If you've ever said, God can't use someone as dirty and worthless as me. If you've ever said, what I've done is too shameful. I've messed up too many times. I've never been good enough and I'll never be good enough. Then you are killing the calling that Jesus has given you little by little. And I'm afraid there are many disciples, many Christians who die a long time before they put us in the ground. We become husks. Walking shells, just perpetually wallowing in our self-regret and in our shameful prison of our own making. We rule out God's plans and we rule out our own responsibility for the calling that he's actually given us. With one breath, we will say that Christ's sacrifice covers and redeems all things. And with the next breath, we say, just not one's as bad as mine. That is the heart of Judas. And the scary part about it is that turns one mistake, one betrayal into a continual, unending string of betrayals. And if you're in that situation this morning, Jesus has a question for you. He's looking at you from the beach and he's saying, child, have you caught any fish? How's it working out? I still have a plan and a purpose for you. I still want to work with you. There's no mistake or life that I can't redeem and work through for good or my glory. Some of us need to take a walk with Jesus on the beach. Because the only true betrayal of Jesus and what Jesus has always stood for is to believe that there's no tomorrow for you, is to believe that there's no coming back from this, whatever this is in your life. Judas decided that his mistakes could not be overcome. Judas decided that his story would end there. Judas decided there was no coming back. And that is why Judas is the one who ultimately betrays Jesus, because Jesus' entire ministry was, from the beginning, and has been, and will always be, the revelation of the God who is the God of second chances and third chances, the God of endless hope, the God of bottomless grace, the God of reckless love. And Peter is willing to walk on the beach with Jesus and face his greatest fears, to stare down his insecurities, to look Jesus in the face through his failures and look Jesus square in the eyes. Beyond that, Peter is the one who's willing to trust Jesus when Jesus says, you're still worth saving, you're still worth loving, and you're still worth working through. You're still fit to be partnered with me in my mission. I need you to feed my sheep. Peter trusts that when Jesus says, I still want you to be my guy, that Jesus actually means it. Peter's willing to trust that Jesus will give him a new tomorrow. And there are so many Christians out there who want to believe, but refuse to believe that Jesus is actually willing or capable of giving them a new tomorrow. But the gospel has always been about new tomorrows. The story from the very beginning has always been about allowing God to write incredible endings to all of our broken and tragic beginnings. That's what it's always been about. The story's always been an invitation to trust God when he says, you have value, you have worth, and you have a purpose. Those things are not defined by what you do. They are defined by who you belong to. And the story of Judas and Peter is a reminder that you are not defined by your biggest mistakes. You are not defined by your deepest insecurities. You're not even defined by your worst fears. You are defined by the one who made you, the one who called you, the one who redeemed you, and the one who, even at this very moment, despite your mistakes, no matter what you have done, loves you and still has a plan and a purpose for you. Do you believe that, church? Do you have the heart of Judas or do you have the heart of Peter? So I say this with all seriousness and hope. If you're in this situation, stop killing yourself like there's no coming back from whatever you've told yourself disqualifies you from being a part of what God is doing in this world. The truth is, Satan can't steal the calling that God puts on your life, but he can discourage you into abandoning it. That's a win for him and a betrayal from you. And so Jesus told all the disciples for a reason that they all would betray him. He told us all that we would. But he also said that he's going before us into Galilee. And that means that Jesus wants us to know that none of us is any better than Judas. None of us is any better than Peter. None of us is any better than the next man beside us, no matter how bad we want to be or what we tell ourselves. We are all in the same fishless boat. We all betray Jesus. We all fall short, but he's gone before us into Galilee. Once confronted with the reality of our own brokenness, we all have the same choice, either to harden our hearts like Judas and refuse to meet Jesus on the beach where he wants to partner with us in his mission, or we can humble our hearts like Peter and see how beautiful it is to realize and walk in the reality that our King Jesus is the God of second, third, fourth, and endless chances, and that Jesus never loses what belongs to him, not you. And that your purpose on this planet, what you're here for, what you're meant to do, can't be taken away by your performance. If you belong to Jesus, your falling does not cancel your calling. If you humble your heart like Peter, it will only make your calling that much greater, no matter what it is. Someone needs to take a walk with Jesus on the beach today. And I do not have a beach for you. We have some beaches in Texas. I'm told they may or may not be worth walking on. I don't know. I've never been. I can't say. So I can't offer you sand, but I can offer you an intimidating aisle. Circumstances and the setting is different, but I can promise you this. The heart of your God is the same. The love of your God is the same. The mercy and the grace and forgiveness of your God is the same. And the calling he had in mind when he decided to make you, no matter what you have done, is the same. It would be a great day for you to meet him on the beach and start walking in it. If we can serve you in any way, please come as we stand and sing.